Rev up your engines! Today I'm going to talk about fan belts, or to be politically correct, today they're called drive belts, not fan belts. Now originally they were called fan belts because they drove the fan. Take this Toyota 4Runner, it's still got the old design. There's the cooling fan, and how is it driven? It's got fan belts that drive it, so they were called fan belts. But alas, modern cars have electric cooling fans. Check it out, they're not belt driven, they're electronic. So, belts are now here. There's only one belt that runs absolutely everything. Even my old Celica has electric cooling fans, but at least it has various different drive belts. One for the alternator, one for the air conditioning, one for the power steering belt. Most modern cars only have one drive belt. Big giant thing. It drives everything. Now because they're ribbed, they're cooled better, they can last an awful long time. Often well over 100,000 miles. But since it's the only belt on your car, when they get old, this one's a 2007 Toyota, you should change them before you have a problem and are left stranded. You can look at them and inspect them for cracks. As we look inside here, you can see there's no big cracks there. Now you can see, it's not particularly cracked up or anything. And it's not making any noise when I start. When they're all worn out, they'll make a squealing noise. But I'm driving to Boston in a couple of days from Tennessee, and this belt's more than 10 years old. So I'm gonna change it out. Just bolts off with 10 millimeter, 1 and 2. Then it just snaps off. Now you can access it better. When we look up here and we turn the flashlight on, we can see right there, that's the nut that you put a wrench on. I'll stick my finger on it so you can see it better. Right on top here, you put a socket on there to move the tensioner. But before you do anything, get your camera, take a picture of the belt. They go around all kinds of things. If you take it off, you're never going to remember all the little wiggles it does. So take a picture first. Better with the flash too. Now the bolt that adjusts the automatic tensioner is 19 millimeters. You need a long extension power because you need a lot of force. It's on there very strong. In this case, down in there, now it's on the adjusting nut, and you pull towards the front of the car. As you pull, it releases the tension. Pull on it hard, and then slide the belt off. As you can see, I pulled the belt off here. Now we can remove the belt. But it's very hard to do from above, so we're going to jack it up. It's easier to put on from the bottom. So we got a jack stand. And our jack, nice and high, so the tires are off. We gotta pull the right front tire off. So take off the cover. Got a little screwdriver on here somewhere. And this has a special lugs on it, so we'll use that. Get the tire out of the way and reach under to get the belt. Now it's not bad for a 10-year-old belt, but when we turn it inside out, you can see it's starting to get a little micro cracks on it. It is 10 years old. And since old Scotty doesn't trust anybody, let's see if the new one's about the same size. And you can see it is. You're gonna be furious if it doesn't fit. Always check it first. Sometimes they give you the wrong number or it's in the wrong box. Check to make sure it's about the same length before you go through a lot of work and beat yourself up because it's the wrong size belt. And take my advice, this is a Gates belt. Belts can last a long time. Cheap belts won't. Why bother? The last one lasted 10 years. I'm putting a quality one on. The old belt was a Dayco belt. That's a good belt too. It lasted 10 years and it was still holding up, but it is cracked. And now we fish it in from the top and then feed it in from the bottom. As we crawl underneath, we'll see. We fished it around here. Now we'll go to the top to loosen the tension. I'm holding the top of the belt. As we pull it towards me, we slip it on the alternator. And there it is. The hardest part's snapping it on here. But now we'll take this off and check the whole thing. Make sure all the belts are on correctly. They're on the top, they go around, just like the picture in our camera. Again, we'll crawl under here. Yeah, so everything's got its little belt in place. So now we'll start it up. Here we go, we'll cross our fingers a little. Not making any noises, it's all fine. So success! We can put it all back together now. And we'll put the stupid beauty cover back on. And we'll put the wheel back on. And you'll notice one thing. I took the wheel off with an electric impact. But I'm putting it back on with a torque wrench so it's on right. You start it by hand, put two of them on opposite corners, and just get them snug. Now it won't wobble, so we're gonna get a torque wrench. We'll set it. In this case, that's like 75 foot-pounds. So I'll move the jack stand. Now we can torque these two down. We can easily torque them down till they click. Then we put the little cap back on. There it goes. If you have fancy lug nuts like me, get your little fancy lug nut removal socket, put it back in the trunk. You wouldn't believe how many customers bring me cars that they don't have the tool to take their lug nuts off, and it's a pain. You got one, always put it back when you're done using it. Now, I'm always giving you free car advice here on YouTube. Today I'm also gonna give you a free tool. I'm giving away one of these torque wrenches so you can get your wheels on right so things don't warp. To have a chance to win, place a clean, non-offensive comment on the YouTube comments below, and the winner will be chosen randomly by computer to get a cool, free torque wrench. And here's some bonus questions and answers. Ragnar Erickson says, I got a 2012 Accord, 4-cylinder, 155,000 kilometers. How do I know when I need to recalibrate the valves? Okay, we call it adjusting the valves. Well, let's see, what you got, like 80,000 miles now? I'd say do it every 70, 80,000 miles. Hondas, you have to adjust the valves. Other cars have hydraulic automatics, Hondas don't, so just, I'd say every 80, 90,000 miles, get them adjusted, and then your engine can last a really long time. They can get too loose and then they clack like mad, but they can also get too tight and then they're quiet, but then the valves are slamming against the heads and eventually they'll crack the head. So for the money you pay for a valve adjustment, it's worth it on a Honda because they do need them manually adjusted. They're not automatic. Victor19 says, I got a 2010 Camry. It blows cold air sometimes. Freezing on the right center and the passenger vent. After 20 minutes, they all blow freezing cold. This only happens during the day. In the night, it's always cold. I can tell you what the problem is. You're just low on refrigerant. When it's cold, colder at night, and the sun isn't beating in, the sun puts a ton of heat in your car, and it's got to get rid of it, all right? But at night, the sun's not up, so there's not as much heat for the air conditioning to cool down. You have the classic sign of you're just low on refrigerant. Have a mechanic like me check and top it up. All cars leak a little bit of refrigerant, and that's 11 years old. When the refrigerant is low, what happens when it's hot outside, the passenger side will blow somewhat cool air because the evaporator for the AC is closer to the passenger. But then by the time the air gets to the driver's side, it's on the other side of the evaporator, which no longer is cold enough because it's low on refrigerant when it's hot outside. Now, when it's night and cooler outside, it'll blow okay because you don't have to take as much heat away. But I can guarantee you, have the refrigerant checked. It might need like a can of refrigerant. That's probably it. That's just typical. They all leak a little over time, and you're just low on refrigerant. It may sound confusing, but now I explained it so you can understand why it's that way. Andy Lewis says, Scotty, love your videos. Gotta thank you. My father has a Saab 2-liter 2000, and after seeing your advice, I put a new battery in the car, and I got more acceleration and better gas mileage too. Thanks for your advice. Well, yeah, especially on a Saab. Even a 2000 Saab, everything is computerized on it. If you don't have the right voltage, the car just isn't going to run right. Plus, if the battery itself is somewhat weak, your alternator is going to have to work too much all the time to recharge the battery. Gas miles will go down, power will go down. You can even, with a bad battery, get voltage spikes where the alternator is having to charge the battery so much the voltage spikes up and down as the battery shorts out. That can destroy stuff. So, you know, it is a good idea to put the biggest battery you can in a car and change it every so many years. Get them load tested with a guy like me or an auto parts store where they'll say, okay, you got a 650 cranking amp battery and you only got 400 cranking amps left. It's a good idea to change it now and not get stranded somewhere, and your car will actually run better. Like in his case, he's getting better gas mileage, has more power just because he swapped the battery. It happens all the time on modern computerized cars. And that's a 22-year-old Saab. Leo Weber says, Scotty, what do you think of the show, The Grand Tour? Well, I like the original Top Gear. And those are the guys from the original BBC, and they had a big hassle, and so they got paid a bunch of money by Amazon to do the Grand Tour. So I like them. You know, they're funny guys. They're very educated guys too, really. Playing games, crazy stuff that they're doing. And they got a much bigger budget with Amazon than they ever had with the cheap BBC. The BBC is an extremely cheap operation. I mean, I've met British guys, the Monty Python guys, John Cleese in England, and he said they were paying us £100 an episode when they started. You know, they're cheap as could be. I can't blame them going to the United States and having Amazon Prime pay for it. They got all this money, you can have a lot more fun with it, you know? I'm all for it. I can't stand the new the American Top Gear. I think it's a pile of crap. And I don't like the English one anymore. They put the stupid Hollywood star in it. He was garbage. Then he left the show. So, poo on them for being so cheap. They were still making money and they shoot themselves in the foot. I like the Grand Tour. I like those guys. They're interesting guys and they got a lot of money to play around with. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.